Well, good morning. Are we all on? Can everyone hear me? Good? You looked frozen there for a second.
Good morning.
So.
Morning, Christian.
Hello. Well, good morning. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of CollabTalk. And we're just going to get things right underway. Just very quickly wanted to, we can introduce ourselves very quickly. I'm Christian Buckley. I am the Managing Director of the Americas for GT Consult, located here in Bellevue, Washington.
Hi, my name is Benjamin Nyland. I work at ShareGate. It's quite cold here in Montreal. How's the weather there in Texas?
The weather in Texas is pretty good. Thank you, Benjamin. I'm Naomi Moneypenny. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Many Worlds. And how about in Boston?
Oh, in Boston, it's freezing, Naomi. We've brinked 12 degrees at this point. That's Fahrenheit. This is Mark Anderson. I'm coming to you from the hinterlands of Boston, and I work for my own little company called Praxis Consulting. Great to be here.
Those that might be new to the format here, this is our second show, so we don't have a lot of old timers yet, but we're going to go through a few topics and talk in depth. Each one of us is going to kind of take the lead and introduce the topics. We're going to be talking today, episode 2, about the new Delve boards, and Naomi is going to spearhead that. And then we're going to talk about why the developers are needed more now than ever, and Mark is going to take that. And then those people that are not yet all in with Office 365, what are they missing out on? And Ben's going to take the lead on that. And then I'm going to talk a bit about Skype for Business and Lync and what's happening there. And with that, I'll turn it over to Naomi.
Great. Thank you, Christian. I appreciate it. So Boards is a new exciting capability that was announced in early January, so just a few weeks ago. And you may not have experienced yet with Delve, because there's a first release program underway, and you can actually check out different things. So Delve generally is the capability that's built on top of Office Graph, which is really around discovering the content that's important to you. So what the new release is really around is understanding that we can have this board capability inside of Delve that allows us to discover the content that's relevant to us, but also to curate the content that's useful to us. So think of it as sort of a pin interest kind of style, so we can use that consumer type of experience and lets us pin together all the different resources, perhaps about a project, perhaps about a team, pin all the different resources in applications and materials that are useful to us and make that collaboratively applicable to our companies. Of course, just how it works with Delve is always you only have access to the information that you can see. So even if you can't see some of those resources, you'll only see on the board, the things that you have access to. So it's a really great new experience, and it's really the first time I've seen a sort of pin interest type style application inside of the enterprise. So I'm curious to know what you guys think about it. What do you think about using a consumer type of experience as a new way of curating knowledge inside of our organizations?
Well, I'll always be willing to jump in and give my opinion. I struggle with the whole pin board kind of idea. I'm seeing that interface starting to show up over and over and over again, actually, on a lot of different platforms. So I think that's the latest sort of metro thing, if you will. It's becoming a very common UI metaphor. So that's part of it. So I'm not necessarily wild about it because I think it's going to become a little too prevalent. The other piece that I wonder about is whether a lot of corporate type of content works well in that sort of visual layout. All the demos have these beautiful pictures of people sailing and beach balls and all that sort of stuff. When you actually look at a bunch of documents that have things in them like, an expense report, it's not very interesting. It's not a very interesting page. So visually, I'm sort of struggling with how it scales or descales or whatever, and works differently in different size organizations. I haven't heard a lot of feedback from actual customers using it regularly yet. I hear that people at Microsoft love it, which isn't a surprise. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out in different types of organizations.
You know, when they opened up and made the email as part of the Delve experience, and then be able to use the board's capability, and I think I agree with you on that point, Mark, that it just flooded the Delve experience with a bunch of visually unattractive content within that. But the board specifically, I mean, it's the content types aside, the ability to go and create like a kind of a visual zip collection of files and put them and filter a view of content. I've actually started to use that a lot in Office 365 to go in around a project, around a certain theme, like presentation materials, corporate branding materials, and so very quickly filter my content into those views. And you've got some artifacts, documents, images, videos that will be in multiple boards, and I can just click on my board list and get that view and have a conversation with somebody on the team around that.
It becomes a much looser type of collaboration than we've typically been used to in the SharePoint land, right? I mean, you can just sort of gather, like you say, sort of gather some things together, and turn them into your own glob, as opposed to having to send somebody to a destination like a team site and find content that way.
Yeah. I actually really enjoyed the whole Delve piece, the fact that you can create these boards, but I want to circle back a little bit, because although I love these, and I'm a geek, I love new technology, I love new features, but I find in the customers that we see, the visits that I do, the concept of, yes, the problem that we have is we have trouble finding our documents. So we came up with metadata, came up with folders, came up with all kinds of ways to solve that same problem. And now, I have to go see somebody in the organization. I say, you know what? Don't worry about it. Some kind of machine learning is just going to bring you the right stuff. I think it's a really cool thing, really good technology. I love the whole board. For me, it's kind of like having a hashtag. But I get to choose what goes in the hashtag, and people can go visit that content. So I love boards, but I find it difficult to see and to express how it's going to work to larger enterprises. That the whole concept of don't worry about it, it's just going to know what you're looking for and bring it up for you in a design that it chooses. That for me is the only I can see the difficult part. It's new technology. Naomi knows a lot more than I do, definitely, about this whole machine learning stuff. So I love it, but I'm waiting to see what's going to happen with all of that and how people are going to adopt. Of course, there's a lot of training involved, but excited. The board part, though, love it. Absolutely love the whole concept of taking the content from wherever it is, putting in a nice little thing you can go see instead of sending files and trying to put them in folders. So love it.
Hey, Naomi, Mark actually made a comment over there, that maybe you can address, which is, I think, one of the biggest questions when a lot of the, and we were all part of the MVP Summit this last fall, but questions that people had about how this impacts information architecture. So where does a board fit into your information architecture?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think Mark's got a good point, and it's really exciting to think about where it fits and what goes on. I think one of the biggest things is really understanding that the feedback that we gave at MVP Summit was really, really important, right? So the ability to use the managed metadata services inside of SharePoint and have those be connected to the kinds of tagging that you do in boards, it was really essential for them from a feedback perspective. So it was a great thing that Microsoft listened to that. Thank you, Microsoft. And that we want these things connected, right? We want this idea of the managed metadata that we have across SharePoint and other applications to be actually pervade into Delve and for, to help people curate the information that they need. I think what's really interesting is that in this new world of information architecture, where we don't have barriers on storage, we don't have barriers on the amount of people who can curate, we're making it much more democratizing of experience, basically, from a curation standpoint. It really does mend our minds in terms of what the architecture can look like. And I do think Ben makes a good point, because I think machine learning can help with those kinds of things, right? But we're not ready to give up all the control yet. And so I think the issue is really understanding what people see from the value perspective. I think it's a long journey. I think that information architecture is still something that's really important. I think it's really important to have that managed metadata services in there if you can, and to have some sort of taxonomy and do the work if you're able to inside of an organization. But there are whole realms of companies, right, small and medium-sized businesses, who will never have access to those capabilities. And so the ability to actually have the Delve kind of experience to help you surface the content you might need to know about is really important. So if you can invest in managed metadata, really still very important, I think, and it will always help and augment the experience that you can get from a machine learning aspect. But really, if you're a small and medium-sized business, hey, it's a great way to start, and it's a good proxy for signal, basically, among the noise.
I think Dan in the chat makes a really, really good point. Often in the last couple of years, and it's not every scenario, but many times we hear, oh, SharePoint is just a glorified folder on the web. And, oh, we just dumped our files in document library. We've got a few columns, so it's definitely...
That is true for a lot of organizations. That's exactly right, yeah.
Very, very helpful to have that whole... And search comes with entity extraction, and I just dived into it recently with an article by Corey Roth, but it's things that people don't take the time to do. We just put our files, we start working on them. So that aspect of machine learning I'm very excited about. I think what's important is to see it as an extra layer. The documents and the content still lives in your SharePoint site. So if you want to put your content types, you want to do your managed metadata, the idea of Delve is to find it and present it to you without having you to go find it, and boards to group these from your perspective by larger categories. So for me, it's more taxonomy and a different way of organizing. Hey, we're working on project XYZ, and there's a little bit in HR, there's a little bit in marketing, a little bit in sales. We group it together, put it in nice cards or not, and then link people to it. I think in the future, I don't know how many years or if that's going to work, but the idea is we don't care where the file is anymore when we're going to consume the content. We just want to see it. That's my thought on it.
And we want to be... Always. Go ahead.
Yeah.
It's really, really important. Yeah.
What makes it more complex is as they add additional sources to that experience. So think about that. If you're not just finding, we've been talking about content, but when all of the Yammer conversations start also showing up, it's going to be a completely different experience. So you'll be able to go and collect artifacts, your documents and files and videos, and create a board there. Whoa, there we go. Are you back, Mark? All right.
He's frozen again.
Sorry, you got frozen again. But it's just going to be a completely different proposition when you're also able to go in there and capture conversations and groups and other aspects of your collaboration experience across Office 365 and link that in there. So if I create a board that is around a project, I can then go build that board around with those important conversations and people profiles and content, so that somebody new coming in starts following that board and instantly gets that content across the board.
I think also...
Oh, hey! That's what it is. Content across the board. It is across the board.
I think also what's exciting is to think about what does it mean from a board perspective for the next generation of knowledge management experiences that we're going to see. So in Julia White's recent blog in terms of the evolution of SharePoint, and talking about some of the experiences we might see in SharePoint 2016, there was definitely an emphasis on the knowledge management portal. And so I think Delve and the way that curate and sort of collaborative curation will actually be a big part of that. So wondered if you guys had any thoughts on that too.
Well, I'm very excited if I'm going to hop on that. Ever since, I mean, we've saw some peaks out of some of these things, but ever since they started talking about next-gen portal, I absolutely love the idea of this consuming and starting to use exactly as it is instead of the whole platform. And, you know, I recently, something that came up in a blog is I go see customers and they're like, hey, you know what, it always sounds good. SharePoint is a platform. SharePoint is a platform. And that was our cry, that was our battle cry for many years. Just like with SharePoint, you can do anything, even a boat. But the idea was really, now this doesn't work. That's complicated. That's going to take 6 months. But now with these experiences that they announced and these portals, you can just start working and start using. And for me, Delve is one of these portals. It's an experience, and I love what they're doing on top of that. I'm very excited to see these new ones on top of knowledge management and everything else they've announced.
I think it's going to be.
What do you think, Christian?
Well, I was just going to say that I know that we've got a Mark that's trying to figure out whether he wants to participate fully or not. But to move on to our second topic, which Mark just happens to be leading, talking about why we need developers now more than ever. It's primarily to fix Mark's CAM technology. So I think he's just proven that point. Mark, are you there? I think he may have gone away completely. Why don't we jump topics and we'll come back. Well, let's reorder this. Ben, if you want to talk about... oh, there he is. Mark! Welcome! Hey.
Am I here for real now?
You are here.
Yep.
And we moved on.
Right.
Why do we need developers now more than ever?
Well, I have a few ideas on that topic. So I think it's interesting where Office 365 is going. I mean, one of the things that we're seeing Microsoft do sort of steadily is back off on a lot of the customizations that we could do from code, that kind of customization that we were able to do on premises. So, for instance, we're starting to hear, don't customize master pages, don't customize branding, don't do this, don't do that. There was a change recently where the script web parts were blocked by a new setting. So we're seeing a lot of things that citizen developers have been able to do for themselves sort of eroding, going away a bit. And that's where I think this, we need more developers thing is coming up, for me anyway. Everything is going to be an app, and you need a developer to build an app because they have to have Visual Studio to do that last bit of packaging at the very least. So that's the idea. Office 365 is sort of, I think we're going to see a bit more sort of bifurcation where we go from, everybody sort of being able to do that they need to do to, the haves and the have-nots, the developers who are building apps and the users who are purely consuming the content, which is more of a cloud model, as you all know. Thoughts?
Yeah, it's funny. We talked about a couple months back on the Tweet Jam about the role of the IT pro. I think it's similar, that whether it's the power user and the citizen developer, the IT pro or the developer, it's not that those functions go away with these changes. We're seeing some huge changes to the underlying technology, the things that we've been working on the last decade, and it takes a recalibration of what you're working on, a rethinking of how do I provide value. Not that the role goes away. It's just different. Some cases, very different in how you interact, but it just takes a rethinking. And honestly, I mean, the opportunity is for those that can figure out and recalibrate the fastest are those that are going to really benefit the greatest from the change.
I think that's exactly right. I think it is a good time to be a developer. I think we do need more of them, definitely. And I do think it's an interesting skill path that's going on. So a lot of the things that made a SharePoint sort of development a barrier to entry are really sort of dissolving. And so the idea of, I have to know something, there was always this sort of concept of, oh, if you're a .NET developer or something, you can figure it out basically in SharePoint. And really, we all knew that wasn't true, right? So you still had to have a lot of experience. And I do think that times are changing now. When you see some of the great stuff available in the Office 365 Patterns and Practices group, all that code is out there on GitHub with these great projects. I look at some of that work out there and people who are very, very passionate about extending solutions, creating solutions, and delivering them in a different way. It's a really great time to sort of get into Office 365 more generally, development. Ben, what do you think?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We have a lot of developers here on the, and it's something that I don't think we need them more now than ever, or that they're less important, as everybody's pretty much saying the same thing. It's just changing. And if anything, from the developers that I know, it's very exciting because it's a different way of working. You get to work with different aspects. Now, Office 365, we have to see it, and I think it's clear now with the last blog post that it's a separate product. It's not SharePoint Online. It's another one. It's a new product, has its own release cycle, and we can talk about that in another episode. But it's really about creating these new apps or whatever it's going to be. Developers are going to be able to work with a lot more broader services, the ones that were in SharePoint only, now to create things in Exchange that combine with SharePoint, that will also use Skype for Business, whatever the case. I think it's a very exciting time, but I don't think that I need them just as much as I need them before. SharePoint, I think Rob made a very good point in the chat, said, one thing that made SharePoint so popular is that we could do things ourselves. That's how I entered it myself. I'm not a developer, but I still did some things that some people thought it was being a developer: HTML, CSS, jQuery, sliders, display templates. For me, these are all things that I'm happy that I can build and then have a solution for my customer or as a customer. And then the developers would create these solutions on top of that. So I think there's a role for everyone. I think developers are very important still. It's just a little bit different, but nothing to worry at all, in my opinion. I mean, Mark will correct me. He's listening very carefully, I can tell.
Well, I think it's interesting because all three of you guys answered that from almost from the developer side, right? But it's great for developers, and that's exactly the opposite point that I'm trying to make. All of those people that Rob alluded to, who are able to do so much with SharePoint Designer, and sort of edge up into the coding realm, are losing a lot of that tool set. And we're not necessarily getting back interesting ways in the UI to configure things to replace that. So, we've lost InfoPath as a forms tool, sort of. I mean, that's another question we will talk about in another day, right?
Yep.
But, the things that end users can do have eroded somewhat in Office 365, and I think we'll continue to see that happen, which means that they're going to have to turn to developers, and that relationship between end users and developers has always been a tricky one and an unpleasant one for many end users. So I hate to see us go back to centralized administration and development over end users solving their own problem on a platform that's been so good at that in the past.
Interesting. I like that idea.
And
how about what do you think, Mark, about from the sort of farm solutions? We've seen a lot of blogs out. I remember, Eric Schutz's great blog about the JavaScript injection, those kind of areas. What do you think the future of those kind of solutions, that there are some capabilities that you really can only do on-prem, or at least when you have total control?
Well, I think that there's middle ground on that. I mean, I'd love to write JavaScript. It's sort of my little game that I play. I think that a lot of developers who are not, they don't sit in IT, they're departmental people. Those citizen developers actually write better code in many cases than the IT folks. You can't decide based on where someone sits what their expertise is. So I don't want to discourage any of those people. We need to give them better hooks as ways to build their own departmental or even enterprise level solutions, things that actually solve the business problem. That's the point, not who writes it. So as we're seeing those opportunities erode, I think that's a shame.
But wouldn't you say that, I mean, with what we're talking about these days is SharePoint is still SharePoint, and we can keep it on premises for those solutions. So if these, where you need to have those full trust solutions or heavy development, these big intranets that we need, we would create them on premises. Or, I'm not as familiar with the whole development story, I'll be honest. So are there things that are removed in the on-premises that make it a lot more difficult than it was in the past? And then using the Office 365 experiences, as they call it, to just take what we need. So instead of building a video portal, for example, we'll just take it. Of course, we'll have to take it as it is, and maybe we'll have some little things, but we'll take it. And then for the bigger, if we needed a very different and a video portal, or if we needed to build something, then we would maybe do it on premises. Or again, I'm not a developer, so of course I don't want to be saying things that I know nothing about.
Well, and it's not really the developers here who have a problem. It's the users. It's the people who actually want to accomplish something, and they need ways to make that happen. And if they have to go to developers more than they did in the past, that's going to feel bad for them. Whether or not anyone likes it, SharePoint is or I keep saying SharePoint, but Office 365 is a web-based tool set. People think that websites should be customizable. That's the way we've been doing websites for 20 years now. So, sometimes people will respond to that statement that I make and say, yeah, but you don't customize Word. So what? I also don't drive a banana to work. You can toss all kinds of spurious arguments at it.
Yeah, Mark.
People want to make these things their own.
Yeah, Mark, you do customize Word. You create templates. PowerPoint. No, nobody does black and white, PowerPoint. You completely visually make it your own. So
I need you to stand next to me the next time someone at Microsoft says, "But they don't customize Word," because of course they do. Yeah. But
I understand from Microsoft perspective around this. I did a blog post about a year and a half ago about the overwhelming scent of vanilla. And it was this idea, and I liked it, just the title, yes. But but one of the ideas is that that you hand, and I used to do this in presentations. So you hand somebody vanilla ice cream, and everybody likes, if you like ice cream, they like vanilla ice cream just fine. How much vanilla ice cream can you eat? Your tastes get very quickly. As they mature, you want other things. You want chocolate. You want other flavors. You want sprinkles. You want it in a cone versus a cup, and kind of all the different options. But it's the experience from Microsoft's perspective for Office 365, and specifically SharePoint Online, is it's a hostable, supportable, scalable, all of those reasons which we know, we understand, we agree with. But the trade-offs for that are all of those other customizations and some decisions that need to be made around what you can and can't do. Because I think fundamentally this whole argument comes down to understanding what it is that you're trying to achieve, and then you have to make that decision whether it can even be done, what your end users need, what is required for the project and for your business, whether it can be done on-prem, in a hybrid environment, or in a pure cloud environment, and make that call, and then live with the results.
That's right. I think that's why we'll still continue to have, the on-prem version available, right? Because if you need such a high degree of customization that you want total control, you'll always go on-prem, right? And so if you're thinking about, I'm running these things as a service, and I want to have a scalable, massive solution, basically, which is what Office 365 is offering you, then you have that choice. And so it always comes down to those business needs, right, and understanding the trade-offs and making sure that we can empower power users as much as we can and basically democratize some of those capabilities. But then if we really want that customization and it really adds business value, then those options are always available to us. All right, interesting chat going on. It really is.
Well, there's a logical pause here. Why don't we jump to our third topic? And Ben, some people are not yet all in on Office 365. I don't know any people that personally. I don't know who those people are. But what are they missing out on if they're not yet completely bought into the vision of Office 365? Like Mark.
No, I think it's a good point. First, the question I find is very interesting in itself, because who is all in Office 365? same for us. I don't know that many people that are 100% in. The whole idea is that we've got the pieces that make sense for our organization, and we put them inside of Office 365 to consume it, to use them. You guys are hilarious. To be able to get those experiences and start using them. So all in Office 365, what are you missing out on? Well, you're maybe missing out on how it integrates together. If you don't have the email or you don't use Outlook web app, then you won't get access. You won't leverage OneDrive for Business or Groups for Office or these other things very well. But I don't think I agree with the whole question in itself. I think Office 365 has immense value, and it's going to keep adding towards it with Compliance Center, with OneDrive for Business that has unlimited storage or so. Of course, we can talk and start the topic on sync problems. That's all going to get fixed and eventually going to be a very solid product. The video portal, Delve, and I could go on for hours and hours. What's important is don't say, okay, I have to go all in to Office 365, or no, I'm staying all out and staying on premises. It doesn't, I mean, we've been talking about it just now with the whole developer stores, is what makes sense for your business. For example, here we have our team sites, we'll have our OneDrive for Business on premises, and then if we need something else, then we'll go and use them. If we need emails, we'll use that. It's just a matter of using what makes sense for you. And with SharePoint 2016 announced with a large focus on the hybrid, I think that's even clearer to use what you need on premises, whatever product it is, and then consume that service in the cloud wherever you need to be. Unless, Mark, do you have a different perspective?
You really want to do this? I think it's really interesting that everyone's saying, oh, but hybrid solves this now, because it's just a word, right? It doesn't mean anything. And I think what most people mean is that they're going to do some things. I love doing this on every show once. Over here we've got, I can't remember which hand's which. On premises over here, we've got Office 365 there, and we're going to use some stuff from each, and they're going to talk to each other really, really well.
So they don't need to.
It's auto magic. Yeah.
I don't think they need to talk to each other. It's just using the right pieces.
It's not quite there yet, right? So we need to figure out where those threads are, and how they're going to work well. Search is sort of doing that now. But why would you go to the cloud just to have a hybrid search? We need to figure out what the stories are for each individual company and how to solve their specific problems, which I will say over and over again and ad infinitum. But I don't think just saying, but hybrid's good, is going to solve anybody's problem. All in for Office 365 doesn't solve anybody's problem.
That's right.
There goes Mark.
There goes Mark, frozen again. So not all in on Office 365. So I think it's a good point though that he was making before he froze. But I think it always comes down to that business need, right? It always comes down to business value. But I do think it's also really important to understand that there are capabilities that we do enable in the cloud that are sort of technology leaders for us, and those kinds of capabilities can be really hard to replicate on-prem. So if I think about Office 365 video, for example, so the ability, people wanted to do the YouTube inside of their organizations for a very long time. And you could do that, right? You could build your own inside of SharePoint, you could build a whole structure around it, and you could do that stuff. But you can't use the power that you can get through the cloud, whether it's the content delivery networks, it's the things to do, the transmogrification of the video, basically, the ability to have that appear in different languages, maybe even do different things in terms of being able to text, speech-to-text kind of applications that are coming up. So there's a lot of different areas that capabilities in the cloud really allow you to do that would be really expensive and really quite prohibitive for on-prem. Even if the business need is there, maybe you wouldn't want to do that sort of buy versus build decision. And so I think that's what we're seeing. We're seeing it reflected up in terms of, I think Haran had a great quote in the chat room about, Office 365 is maybe a new operating system for business. And so I think it's important that, whatever Ben thinks, is to recognize what's going on in terms of the decision making that we do inside of our organizations. So understanding those cloud capabilities, understanding what's really important to have on-prem, and then coming together to think about those issues. So. Thank you guys. Christian, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think when they released Office 365, like the last version of this, the conversation last year, I think it was important to key in on. There was a lot of talk about some of the foundational efforts that were being made, and I think to your point, Naomi, is that a lot of the capability, the machine learning capability that powers a lot of the delve and the search related capability, unless you have a grid, that you can utilize within your organization, and only a few do. We just don't have the computing power to be able to do some of the capabilities which are coming. I've also had the experience working with customers that had a lot of video content, just to use that one example. And you're right. A lot of third-party tools and technology, a lot of expense, performance issues with that. And being able to do that and provide that in a consumable experience. We complain about the latency on pulling up the web experience. Well, try consuming video as a service within a company when you're somewhere in the world where it's sitting on a server, across the country or around the planet from that one source, because that's how the company manages that. So this solves some problems. Yes, it in the interim causes some other issues, but we're building that platform and capability, which over time I think it'll make more sense as more and more of these features. And I know that, to jump ahead, we're talking next month in webisode 3 about the next gen portals, what they are, what that means, and I think we're getting into that territory where it's not all visible today, and I think as more and more of these pieces are released and these experiences, let's use the word now, are released, it will start to make more sense.
Absolutely. I think it's again, it comes to the same thing. We go back to the question is, what are you missing when you're going all in Office 365? I think is completely besides the main point of Office 365 is to use what makes sense for you. And of course, for that, you need to explore Office 365, but from an unbiased eye. A lot of the time, we're like, well, that's the cloud. I'm going to look at it, but I'm not really going to look at it, or it's going to be complicated. Because try to see some of the aspects. Do they make sense for you? Some are maybe using OneDrive for Business in the cloud and everything on-prem, or you can maybe go all in completely in Office 365, and it doesn't because you're small or medium or large. I have a large customer, very, very large across Canada with thousands of users, and they're 100% in Office 365, whatever that means, but in the sense where email, people, OneDrive for Business, video portals, you got a robot problem there. But you get the idea. If it makes sense, if you remove some of the things, you'll get some new things. I think they're making a lot of efforts towards it. We're seeing some very exciting stuff. Now, you shouldn't just go because there's new stuff. And we've used the video portal, but there's tons of other ones. They've announced the About Me and the new authoring tool. They've talked about the KM portal. We've seen Delve. Groups, to be honest, I've been using a lot more, and it's starting to really appeal to me even more. So that experience, if we want to use that, whatever, to consume what I need is huge gain for us. And if it doesn't, we still use whatever other program that makes sense. Look, we're not using Lync right now or Skype for Business for this call. So when it makes sense, we use it, and when it doesn't, we don't. And it's simple as that, I think.
Yeah, I agree, Ben. I think it's really important to look at some of the capabilities that are being offered too in Office 365. So how much incentive there is to move to a cloud, right? Some of these experiences could be replicated on-prem, and we'll see in the next version of SharePoint Server, at least in 2016. But there are new experiences, I think, that we can only deliver in the cloud. And so the question is how much pull is there for these new experiences inside of organizations, especially if you're already sitting on maybe SharePoint 2010. You look at the new experiences, are those too far away for users, right? Is it too much education? Is it too much of a leap? Is it already too hard to do what you've got on-prem? And so is it too hard to stretch and say, okay, I really need this new amazing experiences in Office 365? So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how people react to that kind of functionality change, and how much of it will really be pulling what people need to the cloud and being able to sort of make those judgment calls, right? Making the judgment call inside of each part of the company in terms of what business value you get from what functionality and how quickly you should deliver that. So it makes our jobs even harder in some way.
Well, I think that's part of the point when we talk about, going back to the last topic on, developer needs. As we have more of these kind of plug-and-play experiences, these turnkey solutions within the platform, and can pick and choose which teams, which orgs. I mean, I don't know how much flexibility we'll have there. That's another thing that Microsoft needs feedback on. But then we're going to start seeing some powerful combinations of these things, which will be very, similar to, what we're doing on-prem today and going and building these custom experiences. But it'll be in a supportable, scalable model, out on the cloud. Mark, are you back? Any other thoughts?
I am. My thought is, why did Windows just crash on me 3 times when I was saying what I said? That's a little weird.
It's Cortana.
Ghost in the machine.
Windows 8, not doing anything crazy here.
Oh, it's fun. I think there's there was some great conversation too in the chat room of what's going on in terms of, I think Derek was point here in the missing story in Office 365 is the gateway drug to Azure. And I have to really, really agree with that. I see the most innovation going on inside of the Azure platform, and I think that's incredible to see how those services that they're delivering at an enormous rate and even more accelerating every day, how those services are now being consumed by Office 365 kind of like as an internal customer, right? So we couldn't have the Office 365 video portal, for example, if we didn't have that Azure capability for the video streaming in the first place. So I think it's amazing to see how quickly and how that can sort of take us up that level of abstraction in terms of what you can do in Azure, what you can do in Office 365, and then what you can do further on there.
I think a lot of the hybrid experiences, and as we start to look at the extensibility of the data sources and being able to pull on-prem, whether it's your SharePoint environments or the file shares or other cloud storage vendors, that Azure will play a large role in that. And so, I think it's definitely, for those that are not yet participating in some of the community sites that are out there and available, like on Yammer, the Office 365 technical community, where a lot of those conversations are happening. You definitely want to go and follow the conversations in some of the Azure groups, because Naomi's right. I mean, a lot of the innovation is happening there that are going to impact how we're able to consume through our from our on-prem environments through hybrid solutions.
That's right. I think it's really cool. I think amazing stuff that we're seeing with Azure SQL. I think some of the microservice stuff that's coming out is just incredible. So just the consumption and the rate of development inside of Azure, and then the folks in the Office 365 is basically a customer for all of those services. And so we'll see the increased acceleration and a pace of change that we have never seen before, I think, from Microsoft. And that is one of the hugest benefits for the cloud. But if you do actually want to control that, that's why you'll still have the option, of course, to run stuff on-prem and maybe have an improved update cycle that we talked about in terms of SharePoint Server 2016 and how that gets managed. Ben, any thoughts on this?
All right, I think we pretty much covered all we wanted to talk on that particular topic. Mark, do you want to? Probably best that you don't say anything, actually.
Actually, I have one last thought. So I think the whole concept of hybrid is actually a much bigger one. If you remember what we used to talk about as mashups and composites, sort of the hybrid thing is the next step in that kind of evolution. Hybrid doesn't just mean SharePoint on premises and SharePoint in the cloud or Office 365. It means that you've got the internet at your disposal, and you can pick and choose the services that you need. If Microsoft offers the best one, then awesome, right? If Bing mapping is going to solve your problem, perfect. If not, go and use a different one. So I think that the idea of hybrid is a much bigger concept than, do we run our servers on premises or do we use Office 365? The whole world is opening up a lot, and the development world is opening up a lot too, which is part of where some of the development techniques that are coming up with Office 365 are actually a very good thing.
Great. Yep.
I had to say something.
Well, and for our final topic of the day on Skype for Business, and this was something that we've been talking about for a long time when Microsoft acquired Skype, and everyone just kind of, it was one of those moments where everybody just kind of went, okay, what does this actually mean? How do these fit together? What's happening with Lync? And so it's very exciting. I know there was some leadership changes there and some new direction there with the combining of Lync and Skype and the creation of Skype for Business. As a long-time Skype user, it's one of those technologies that I could be sitting down in an airport in New Zealand and get on the little, the Skybar Wi-Fi there with a moderately weak signal, but get on to Skype and have a conversation, do a video chat with family members, and it came through pretty strong. It's just been it's a great platform, and honestly, I don't mean to pick on the Lync folks, but been using Lync through Office 365. It's not always been the most stable. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's us. But I find that we have, time and again, gone over and just started using Skype. I mean, just instantly we've got a meeting. So I'm glad to see those. I don't know, honestly, I don't know what's happening on the technology, which pieces are moving where. But things like being able to have an admin console over the Lync accounts within my business and be able to manage that is good. Being able to do things like the one link, the single click, login, so that I can have my address book linked to my Skype list and be able just to click and call and have that level of automation is fantastic. But all of the capabilities that we're accustomed to, being able to, I'm using it more and more for meetings, for one-on-ones, for group conversations, for desktop and application sharing, and it's just become a huge part of the way that I work on a day-to-day basis.
Agreed.
Sorry,
go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, okay. So, well, because me, it's going to be very, very short. And the way that I work, I hope I'm not going to get kicked out by some secret Microsoft agent, but I'm using a Mac, right? And most of the team that I work with, we use Macs. Most of us in marketing and all of the teams that we have, except the developers, of course. So, yeah. Has anybody used the Lync or Skype for Business or Lync for Mac? Yeah. Yes.
No.
So I'm not really using it, to be honest. I'm still using other methods or anything else at our disposal. But unfortunately, until same thing for OneDrive for Business, we just recently got our sync app, and for me, it's still very, very young, very new, and I'm hoping to see a lot more come to it. But right now, in terms of adding it for our team. And many others, and many customers today, we're all bringing our own devices. We've all got, I'm seeing people in enterprise just come with their laptops on the side. And so for me, it's still a little bit missing. And from what I've seen, all my experiences so far.
So sorry, Ben, I think Dan had a great point, and he says, considering how cross-platform FaceTime is. So my wife and kids are Mac users and have iPhones, and yet when we're connecting with my kids away from home, it's using Skype on my wife's Mac. Works just fine.
That's right.
But yeah,
It's not for business.
Yeah. I think it's really
well, that's a relatively new thing, but I'll tell you, I get a lot of business done.
I was going to make the point, I do think it's interesting that if you think about the future of work a little bit, which is what I think we're seeing here. So if we think about Lync as a tool was really evolved to look after our inside of our corporation, right? It was a sort of a virtual PBX tool plus the video conferencing and the things that we needed for collaboration inside. And Skype was driven by the volume and consumers, right? And so the ability to collaborate in different ways, whether they're your family or they're your team. So also what I think is important is that we're recognizing that most of the work and the collaboration that we do these days oftentimes is not inside of our own companies. And so I think the whole idea of how we merge Lync and how we merge Skype and the way that we do work and this whole, the future of work and the work-life balance and all those other things that we think about every day are really actually changing the way that the experience is being delivered. So I think that's why we see Skype for Business, because so many people are using it for business, whether they're small companies, medium-sized companies, companies are growing, and sometimes it is just the lowest common denominator platform so you can connect everybody together, right? It's any platform and any device, right? And that's what we're really looking for. And so I think changing the way that we do that collaboration, the changing the way that we can communicate with each other is really important in terms of I just need to get the information and for the technology to get out of the way, right?
And I keep sharing.
This is a space where
that. Oh, let him go.
Go, Mark.
No, okay. I just wanted to say basically.
I was just going to say, this is a space that you go. You go. You.
All right. So essentially, I was talking about. We keep talking about how Skype for Business and Skype are. We're going to see how it integrates together, but. Was there a confirmation that they're bringing the technologies together, or why do we assume so? I keep seeing that OneDrive for Business is whatever it is, mostly SharePoint, and OneDrive is just some other platform, and it's mostly for the brand recognition, I think, that it has the name that it does. So to say that there's Skype and it's great and it works great, and then for sure what we're going to see Skype for Business is going to be closer to that. It could be just a brand thing and a name thing, and it's still 100% Lync, and then maybe some address book connections and so on. But so I just, it's for myself actually. Did we see any confirmation that technology-wise they're integrating these two?
We saw collaboration in terms of the contact books and the address books. They didn't say exactly yet. So anyway, sorry, Christian, do you want to?
Yeah, so I think you're right. A lot of the things that they're talking about, so there's the branding pieces, and actually we've got a link in the resources list over here that you can take to the site, and it has some screenshots there. So there is the rebranding and the renaming at the top. There are some features that come across, but as far as the back end, I'm not aware. The differences still between the two platforms. It's almost so you have the one that is the standard Office 365. It's the instant messaging. You instantly you'll push out. Whether it then launches the full Skype app if you're doing a meeting or not. I mean, those are some details that we still need about the technology. But I think everybody wants to have a single technology, have it do both of those things, and have it be stable. That is my wish, but otherwise, and Naomi, I love your point about the fact that I'm collaborating constantly with customers and partners, people that are not in my org, that are not on my Lync list, that IM capability, and so I find that I'm leaving Skype open, all day long, and it just runs out there, and so I'm having my chats as well as videos all day long.
And I've seen that a lot with customers in terms of where their IT is sort of quite behind, and so their Lync doesn't talk to anything outside, and then they bring in their own devices, and so they'll use it on an iPad or whatever, and it's easier to do a video conference that way. I mean, it's the crazy thing. Sometimes you just can't get over what the capabilities of IT inside of those corporations are delivering, and so people will just find the way around, right? So you might as well enable it, right? It's going to happen anyway, and it's better that it happens in a sort of channel that you have some control over, and that collaboration with external parties is critical, right? It is really truly critical. So the consultants, the advice you get, the conversations you have with other customers, the recognition that is the future of collaboration and getting that information that we need inside of our companies as fast as possible. These are all about the technologies that empower that, right? It's been a long time. We've had video conferencing and all this other stuff for a very long time, and yet it really sometimes takes something that's a consumer experience to make us feel comfortable. not just a formal video conference where we all sit around the clever table and all that kind of stuff inside of our organizations. So I do think seeing those things come together, getting rid of those artificial divides between applications, really, really important. Just be able to communicate with people.
Yeah, I think we've been using these technologies for I think probably more than 15 years now. We've been doing either audio conferencing or video conferencing for at least that long. The problem used to be bandwidth. Now it's the bloat in the software itself. The software has gotten worse while the bandwidth has gotten better. We have this problem on this call sometimes, right? So I think
some of us do, Mark.
I have my own problems. But what I find is that as these products are maturing, WebEx basically became unusable. Some of the big ones have become unusable because I don't know what they're doing to them. I hope that Microsoft is able to not dial up Skype for Business so much that it becomes the next thing that doesn't work well. I find that the upstart ones that are sort of the one-offs where they're free work better than the corporate stuff. And everybody I know in a corporation who can goes to those free things because they work. They don't care what's corporate any more than they cared when Dropbox was free and easy, right? So we need to see that the evolution is that these products become simpler, more reliable for Christian, just Christian, because the rest of us have no problem, and easier to use so that it becomes less and less of a hassle to have these frictionless collaboration events that we all know we have to have these days. And they should be painless. I'm so tired of that 15 minutes at the beginning of every meeting where you try and figure out if everybody's actually on the call, that whether they can hear you, whether or not you can see them, all that stuff. We lose.
Whether their videos freeze up and you don't know if they're actually still hearing you. Jerks like that. Yes, I agree.
Whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I think that it is critical. I think as well when we see many more people working from home, right, not sitting inside of the corporate office, that's another thing. When you find that the stuff that you just have at home works so much better than the thing you were given by your company, then it just becomes a natural thing. So, and yeah, all the productivity minutes we all wait, in the 5 minutes at the beginning of the meeting while everybody dials in and can they get online and can they see the slides and all that stuff, right? I mean, it's a huge productivity drain on the company, right? I spend, those 5 minutes of my day, that happens all the time, right? So I probably spend an hour a day of those 5 minutes, and basically I take that time to go off to the Yammer.com, the Office 365 network, and answer questions. And so people often ask, like, how do you have time to go answer questions on the Office 365 network? Because I'm waiting for people to dial into Lync, right? That's what I do. That is the secret, right? And it's why you'll see me post at the top of the hour quite a lot on there.
By making Lync not work well, they're boosting Yammer usage. That's it.
But I answer questions on there often at the top of the hour because I'm waiting for people to dial in. So, that's one of those things. You see, and Jennifer does it too. It's a whole productivity hack. Life pro tips here on CollabTalk. Anyway.
Well, all right. We lost Naomi now.
Oh.
Well,
No, she's fine.
Oh, so we're at the top of the hour anyway. I want to thank everyone for participating. Naomi, wherever she is out there in the ether, out in the interwebs. Ben, Mark, and thank you all for participating. I do want to just make a pitch for next month. So our webisode that is in March is going to focus on. Oh, and I had it up and ready to go here. So we're going to be talking about, is InfoPath now part of the undead? Don't know. So it's going to be kind of an early Halloween topic.
Zombie path.
We're going to get into the next-gen portal. So we're going to talk about the consuming versus SharePoint as a platform. And so we'll get a little more in-depth there. We are going to talk about the About Me page and new authoring tool and some of the other new things that are coming up. And there will be some rumors and speculation in that section as well. Some things we know, some things we're going to dream up. Which ones are real? Don't know. You got to be there for it. And then we're also going to talk about the Office 365 Compliance Center. So we are going to get in and talk about some of the admin capabilities. Yeah, thank you, Ben, for that suggestion. We definitely wanted to hit that.
Great suggestion.
That's really good, Ben.
Great suggestion. So, and Naomi's back. All right. So thank you all for participating. You can go, of course, anytime to itunity.com, whack CollabTalk, and register for the next session. And the link is over in the tools there. And please reach out to us individually if you've got questions and want to keep the conversation going. Thanks a lot, everybody.
I enjoyed joining you for 48 minutes.
I don't think it was that much time, Mark.
And all the alternate views, too. Those were important. All right, bye, guys. Thank you so much.